The night of the mating ceremony was cold and bright with torchlight. Hundreds of wolves from every allied pack gathered in the great hall of the Alpha King's castle, waiting for the moment that came only once in a king's life, the moment he would find the one whose scent matched his own soul. Alpha King Draven stood at the center of the hall, tall and unreadable, his golden eyes moving across the crowd. For 3 years he had ruled alone, and his council had grown tired of whispering about weakness. A king without a mate was a king without an heir, and a king without an heir was a king the neighboring packs believed they could challenge. Draven did not care about whispers. He cared about one thing only: finding the scent that had haunted his dreams since he was a boy, the scent his mother once told him he would know the instant it reached him. And then, in the middle of the crowded hall, it happened. A scent drifted past him, soft and warm, like rain on new leaves. His whole body went still. His wolf rose inside him, desperate and certain. He turned, searching the sea of faces, his heart pounding harder than it ever had in battle. He caught a glimpse of her, only for a moment. A young woman with dark hair and frightened eyes, standing near the back of the hall, half hidden behind a pillar. Their eyes met for one heartbeat. Then she turned and disappeared into the crowd. Draven pushed forward, calling for the doors to be sealed, but by the time his guards reached the entrance, she was gone. No one could tell him her name. No one seemed to remember her at all. He searched for 3 days. He sent trackers into the forest and questioned every pack that had attended the ceremony, but the trail vanished as if she had never existed. On the 4th day, humiliated by his own council and desperate to silence the growing rumors, Draven did something he would regret for years. He stood before the court and claimed Seraphina, the ambitious daughter of a powerful allied pack, as his mate. It was not a bond of scent, it was a bond of politics, sealed to prove that the Alpha King was still strong. The kingdom celebrated. Draven did not. 2 years passed. Seraphina ruled beside him with sharp words and colder eyes. She was clever, and she was proud, but she had given him no heir, and the whispers that once questioned his strength now questioned hers. She grew crueler each season, especially toward the servants who could not defend themselves, and Draven found himself spending less time in his own halls just to avoid her voice. It was in the depths of that 2nd year that a new healer arrived at the castle. Her name was Elena. She was quiet, careful, and always seemed to walk in the shadows rather than the light. She rarely spoke unless spoken to, and she never once looked directly at the king. The other servants said she kept 2 young boys with her, twins, no older than 2 years, whom she called her late sister's sons. She guarded them so closely that no one in the castle had ever seen their faces up close. Draven noticed her the very first week. He told himself it was nothing. He told himself many things. But something about her presence made the air feel different, made his wolf restless in a way it had not been since the night of the ceremony. He found excuses to walk near the healer's quarters. He found himself listening for her footsteps in the corridors, and late at night, alone in his chambers, he began to dream again of rain on new leaves. He did not understand why. Elena, for her part, did everything she could to stay unseen. She kept her sons hidden during court events. She never accepted invitations to the Great Hall. She flinched whenever Seraphina's name was spoken, though no one thought to ask her why. If anyone had looked closely, they might have noticed that the 2 boys had golden eyes, the exact shade of the king's own. But no one looked closely, not yet. Autumn came, and with it, the yearly hunting gathering, when the pack traveled deep into the northern forest to test the young wolves and strengthen the bonds between families. Elena tried to keep her sons away from the event, but the boys, full of energy and curiosity, slipped from her side while she prepared medicine for an injured hunter. It happened quickly. A rogue wolf, driven mad by hunger and separated from any pack, burst from the trees near the children. One boy froze in fear. The rogue lunged. Elena did not think. She threw herself between her son and the attacking wolf, shifting into her wolf form in a single desperate motion, her body glowing faintly with the mark of a bloodline few in the kingdom still carried. Draven, only a short distance away inspecting the hunting grounds, turned at the sound of the commotion. What he saw stopped his heart. The healer's wolf form burned pale silver in the afternoon light, and along her shoulder, unmistakable even from a distance, was a marking he had seen only once before, carved into the old royal records his mother once showed him as a child. It was the mark of a true mate bloodline, a mark meant only for the one soul who could complete an alpha king. He ran without thinking, driving off the rogue wolf himself, his fury sharper than anything he had felt in years. When the danger passed and Elena shifted back, trembling and holding her frightened son close, Draven finally understood. The scent, the eyes he could never forget, the woman who vanished into the crowd 2 years ago. She was standing in front of him now, in his own hunting grounds, holding a child with golden eyes, exactly like his own. "Elena," he said quietly, his voice shaking in a way his guards had never heard before. "Look at me." She did not want to. Her eyes were full of fear, not of the rogue wolf, but of him. "Please," she whispered, "don't take them from me." "Take them?" Draven's voice cracked. "Elena, are they—" He could not finish the question. He did not need to. The second boy, curious despite the danger, toddled forward and reached small hands toward the king, giggling, as though he somehow already knew who he was. Draven fell to his knees in the dirt, staring at his sons for the first time. That evening, in the privacy of the healer's quarters, Elena finally told him the truth. 2 years ago, at the mating ceremony, she had felt the same overwhelming pull he had. She had recognized him instantly as her true mate. But before she could step forward, Seraphina's mother had found her outside the hall and warned her, in a voice colder than winter, that if she ever claimed the Alpha King, her family would suffer. Elena had no pack of her own to protect her, only a small family of healers with no political power. She had believed the threat completely, and she had run. She discovered she was carrying his children only weeks later, hiding in a distant village, terrified that Seraphina's family would find her and make good on their warning. She raised the twins in secret, moving from town to town, until fate, or perhaps her own wolf's need to be near her true mate, brought her back to the castle, disguised as nothing more than a healer. She had planned to leave again, before anyone noticed the boy's eyes. Draven listened to every word in silence, his hands clenched, his heart breaking with guilt for the mate he never should have let disappear, and burning with anger toward the family who had frightened her away. "You should never have had to hide," he said finally. "Not from them, not from me." "I was afraid," Elena admitted, tears finally falling. "I didn't know what kind of king you had become. I only knew what kind of family stood beside you." Draven took her hands gently, careful not to frighten her further. "That family," he said, "will answer for what they did. I promise you that." The following morning, Draven called the entire court together. Seraphina stood beside him, confused by the sudden gathering, unaware that her own mother's cruelty was about to unravel everything she had built. Draven spoke plainly, without anger in his voice, though anger burned beneath every word. He told the court of the true mate he had lost on the night of the ceremony. He told them of the healer who had lived quietly among them for months. And he told them, at last, of the 2 sons hidden away out of fear. Gasps rippled through the hall. Seraphina's face went pale. "You knew," Draven said, turning to her. "Did you know what your mother did?" Seraphina's silence was answer enough. But it was her mother, standing near the back of the hall, who broke first, her pride crumbling under the weight of the court stairs. She was nothing, the older woman spat, though her voice trembled now. A healer, with no pack, no power. She never deserved to stand beside an Alpha King. "I only did what was necessary to protect my daughter's place." The hall fell utterly silent. Draven's voice, when it came, was quiet and final. "You threatened an innocent woman and hid my own children from me for 2 years. There is no place in this kingdom for that kind of cruelty, no matter whose blood you carry. Under the ancient laws of the pack, a marriage built on deception and the endangerment of a true mate and rightful heirs could be dissolved by the king's word alone, without need for council debate. Draven exercised that right then and there, ending his bond with Seraphina in front of the entire court. Her family, stripped of their alliance and their standing, was ordered to leave the kingdom's protection by the end of the season. It was not a peaceful ending. Seraphina's mother, refusing to accept the fall of everything she had schemed for, attempted one final, desperate act. That very night, she sent hired wolves to seize the twins before Draven could formally name them as heirs, hoping to use the children as leverage to save her family's position. The attack came swiftly, but Draven and Elena were faster, fighting side by side for the first time as true mates, their bond giving them a strength neither had known alone. They drove off the attackers before any harm could reach their sons. Draven himself ensured that Seraphina's mother would never again threaten anyone within his kingdom. By the time the sun rose, the danger had passed, and peace, real peace, finally settled over the castle. In the days that followed, Draven completed the true mating bond with Elena before the full court, the ceremony he should have shared with her 2 years earlier. This time, there was no scent that slipped away into a crowd, no fear driving her into hiding. She stood beside him in the light, unafraid, as the pack welcomed her not as a secret, but as their rightful queen. The twins, finally free to be seen, were presented to the kingdom as its true heirs. The hall that had once gasped in shock now erupted in cheers that shook the ancient stone walls, generations of doubt about the king's strength finally silenced, not by politics, but by truth. Elena often thought back to that frightened night at the ceremony, when she had believed running was her only choice. She never imagined that 2 years later she would stand in that same hall, no longer hiding, with her sons in her arms and her true mate beside her. Draven, watching his family accepted by the court he had once feared would never understand, finally felt the peace he had been missing since the day his mate disappeared into the crowd. The kingdom, at last, had its queen, and the Alpha King, at last, had found his way home.